Hey there, welcome back to the show. I'm Phil. You know, I could hear that sip really distinctly. That was a really distinct sip.
Sorry, I thought I was being so discreet.
Phil Vischer podcast. I'm here with Christian Taylor.
The noisy one.
Sipping her passion fruit essenced sparkling water.
Thanks.
Ooh, that's fancy. Hi, how are you?
Noisy.
It's beautiful weather, isn't it?
I know. I'm so happy.
Be outside all the time.
Yeah, what are we doing in here?
And Sky Jitani.
Hi.
Hi. That's all you got to say.
Yeah.
Okay. He knows he has to endure this, what you're about to do next.
Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. Oh, we'll talk to Sky.
Hi.
And Christian, too.
Hi, Phil.
Hi. And it's a sunny day and the sky is blue. That was off script. Hey, it's a podcast, so lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. I'm feeling a little peppy, and I don't know why.
I'm glad. I'm feeling a little low.
Maybe it's the weather.
Weather helps. It's been beautiful the last
Maybe it's
couple days.
the plumber that's at my house trying to figure out why the drain in the laundry room keeps backing up. Maybe that's why I'm feeling peppy.
It's not good.
Because the laundry room...
Because you don't have to be there cleaning it out?
Smells like sludge.
Ew.
Yeah, and it actually backed up so much that my son went into his bathroom, which is next to the laundry room, and his rugs on the floor were soaking wet.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
How did that happen? So that's what we're doing.
And we haven't had much rain.
No, it's not rain. It's some clog somewhere in the system, but the same plumber was there 2 days ago routing out that drain, thinking, okay, all done, taken care of.
Do you know what's weird?
And then it backed up even worse the day after he left.
You know Josh from the Movie Proposal podcast?
Yeah.
Which everyone should be listening to?
Is a plumber.
His wife is right this moment waiting for the plumber for the exact same reason.
Seriously?
Yes.
I didn't know
just
that.
got off the phone with her.
Oh, wow.
That's funny.
He's not a plumber. He sells financial
No, but he's a victim
products.
of your same plumbing problem.
Yeah.
It's
That's
going
not fun.
around.
And a week ago, we had a backhoe in our front yard digging up our well because our well had sprung a leak. The wellhead had sprung a leak and it was flooding our front yard.
Oh gosh.
So yeah.
You've had a lot of plumbing problems.
Yeah, I know. Water. You take water for granted that it will just flow in and out of your house without making any mess along the way. And it doesn't necessarily always.
That's why we should be grateful for people who help us with these problems.
So true.
God bless the plumber. We're dedicating today's episode to the lowly plumber. You don't think much of him, but you need him more than you need web developers. That's for sure.
We have taken them for granted far too long.
Have you ever seen Blue Man Group in Chicago?
Yeah, a long time ago.
The bit they do about plumbing.
I don't remember
About that there's a network, talking about this network that connects all of us.
Yeah.
And no matter where you are in the network, if you put data into the system, it goes in the same direction away.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, and then they reveal that the network they're talking about is modern plumbing.
It really
That's
is
what
amazing.
they were doing? There actually is like a story behind all that
And
craziness?
just think,
Yeah,
modern
of course.
plumbing protects us from real viruses and
Right.
not just
we
the
don't even
virtual
think
kind.
about it. We
Yeah.
don't even think about it. But 100 years ago, you were getting all sorts of stuff.
Right.
You know, every time it rained too much.
The first time I realized I never thought about plumbing or all of our modern conveniences was when I landed in Jakarta, and I was having to take a little becak through the streets of Jakarta, and it smelled like a bathroom, or worse, really. And I looked out the window and could see out of people's houses were these white PVC tubes running straight into the street with all this sludge and gross stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's what they do there is they throw their trash out of their windows and their plumbing just goes right into the street.
That's different.
Which is also a metaphor for the internet.
That's true.
We throw our trash out the windows and our plumbing runs into the streets.
Right, that's what the internet is. If you ever read the comment section on most websites, that's pretty much what it is.
That is very, very true.
It is the sewer pipe of the soul.
So we've decided
I love that.
that plumbing and the internet are basically the same thing.
Right.
Just in different levels of literalness or metaphoricalness.
Right.
Is metaphoricalness a word?
I don't think so, but
metaphoricality?
The root is a word.
I think we should just move on.
Metaphor colostomy.
What are we talking about today?
There was a march over the weekend.
I saw that.
Was it over the weekend?
It seems like there's a march every weekend.
I know. We are marching a lot these days.
Everyone's marching.
We must be getting in shape.
Well, we have a lot to say.
We had a women's march. Are all the marches lately related to Donald Trump in some way, shape, or form?
I think he is provoking more.
He is an inspirer.
He actually is
that big
a
march
unifier.
in North Korea.
He's a unifier, though.
Yeah,
I think
that was a great march.
We missed that memo. He really unifies everyone.
To march.
I guess.
Yeah, we're getting organized. We're getting together. This was a march for science, not for women. We already did that. We took care of the women. The women are fine now. Now it's science that we have to take care of.
We got to protect science, huh?
It was protesting in support of, this was the best summary of what they were protesting.
I was always unclear exactly.
They are in support of evidence-based policies.
Okay.
As opposed to...
That's a good question, Guy.
Well, there are... I'd argue that all policies are based on evidence. It's just what evidence are they looking for?
Right.
Well, okay.
Like, no, I mean, even completely ridiculous policies, if the evidence they're looking at is how many Americans support it, that's still evidence, right?
That's a good point. So populism is evidence-based?
Right, but it's not the kind they want.
So they're scientific evidence.
Okay.
I think
the issue here is that people are trying to find a reason that makes sense, that sounds,
to march,
weighty, to march, but truthfully, it is an emotional reaction against what they feel that Donald Trump is doing to our society. And so there is this huge feeling that he doesn't deal in the world of facts, and neither does his administration.
Right. Well, we're reducing funding for climate control. We're reducing funding for environmental protection. We're reducing funding for all sorts of things. And I guess the argument is, we know for a fact that those things are necessary.
Right.
I'm a little surprised then that they didn't make this a march for the environment or a march against global warming.
Yeah,
or a
and
march.
it was on Earth Day.
Yeah, but why make it so broad as science?
I have a theory.
Okay, what is it?
So I think it's getting jumbled up in people's brains that Donald Trump is a Republican.
Yeah.
He's a Christian, in air quotes. And I'm saying air quotes because he calls himself a Christian, but a lot of the other people say he's not.
He's in front of a movement that is heavily Christian populated.
And so that's his base that elected him, correct?
Yeah.
And so there was already a war between Christians and science. And so this is just more of that.
I have a simpler explanation.
Okay, you would.
I don't.
You're probably right, too.
I think they framed it this way because it was the most direct way of saying people who support Donald Trump are stupid.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you remember back before Donald Trump was a candidate, Bobby Jindal, who was the governor of Louisiana and a Republican, said that the Republican Party has to stop being the party of stupid. I mean,
he said that?
He said that. He said that because that's the brand that the Republican Party was gaining for itself for various positions it was taking. And I think those who are opposed to Donald Trump and those who are opposed to the Republican Party want to identify themselves in the broader culture as we are the intelligent, rational, thoughtful people, and everyone who disagrees with us is stupid. So do you want to be for or against science?
Have you heard about Bill Nye's new show on Netflix?
Not a lot. I know he's doing something.
Bill Nye the Science Guy?
Yeah.
Bill Nye the Science Guy has a new show on Netflix. It's not for kids.
I know, it's for adults.
It's for grown-ups. Do you know what it's called? Bill Nye Saves the World. It's somewhat messianic.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And apocalyptic in nature. But the purpose of the show is for him to basically take issues like climate change denial and vaccine denial and take them head on, kind of like John Oliver would do on his, deep stuff on his show, and just kind of say, here's the data, there, I've proven it. The question is, does that do any good?
Well, I will tell you.
Will he persuade anybody on the other side?
Will anyone change their name?
I saw
their positions?
a documentary. It was a news report, really, of a guy going down to St. Charles, Louisiana, which apparently is the nexus of climate change because everything's happening right there.
You can see the effects very dramatically.
Right, with a community full of people that does not believe that climate change is real. And one of the most striking interviews was a small craft pilot who said he's been flying over these waters for 50 years or something like that, and he has watched the sea just consume the land. And every time he goes out almost, there's less land. And he will still say, well, it's just the way things are. The water is just, the tides are changing. And so he can admit and visually see there is a difference.
You can see it happening.
To be fair, and I usually don't get into this conversation much, especially on climate change, I don't know anybody who's denying climate change. There are people who deny that the climate change is man-made.
Right.
Or human caused. So there's a debate about causation. Is it just a natural phenomenon that ebbs and flows with weather patterns over the centuries, or is it actually caused by human emission of carbon into the atmosphere? That's debate number one. Debate number two, then, even if you agree with human-caused climate change, is what do you do about it?
Can you do anything?
Can you do anything about it?
Right.
If you can, what do you do about it? And should the United States do anything unilaterally about it if you don't have the biggest polluters like India and China involved? So there's a lot of different facets to this debate, which doesn't make everybody who disagrees with the Democratic platform automatically non-scientific or stupid.
Christian?
Here's my question.
Oh, Christian has a question.
What I don't understand is the Bible commands us to be caretakers of what God created, right? So I would think that as somebody who believes what the Bible says and believes that I am to take care of this world, why shouldn't I care about having as small a footprint as humanly possible, or care about if there is the slightest chance that something I am doing...
2 words. Premillennial dispensationalism.
Oh, my word. That's just 2 words?
That's 2 words.
I was about to say eschatology.
Yeah,
one word.
So, for the last 125 years, the dominant view of the future held by Christians in this, at least conservative evangelical Christians in this country, says that this world is going to be destroyed and nothing will endure. So if you do not believe this world is going to last, and you believe Jesus is coming back at any time, and he's just here to rescue souls, then who cares?
Okay, but I tell you
That's a lot of what's behind this.
You see this iPhone?
No.
This iPhone.
Oh, that one.
Yeah,
okay.
This iPhone, it is not going to last. I'm going to have to replace it. I know that because I've had to replace like 10 of them already.
Yeah, especially if it's a Galaxy 7, that they're burning up like the end times.
Yeah, that's kind of a nice metaphor.
Okay, but the thing is, it's still a responsible thing for me to do, to take care of this iPhone, and to make sure that I don't use it irresponsibly or cause specific damage to it.
But that's just because of economic realities. See, we measure everything in economics now because we are so smitten with the free market that we measure everything in economic results. So you take care of your phone because it would cost you to not take care of your phone.
Well, it is going to cost us more by not taking care of our planet.
Yeah, but that's for like our great-grandchildren. Who cares?
But here's the problem. We've been politicized. We've been politicized through the 70s and 80s that if you are a conservative Christian, Democrats and everything they stand for is wrong and evil.
Except
did you grow up with any of that?
Newsflash, yes, I did. But newsflash, there are lots of Christians who are Democrats. Now honestly,
Christian in air quotes.
I know. I did grow up in that same mindset.
Yes, so
but
therefore,
I have learned that's wrong.
Therefore, if the other side is about sides,
okay,
the other side says coal is bad, fossil fuels are bad, you should be driving an electric car or riding a bike, and eventually, no doubt, and so then your side says, wait, you're trying to take my car away, just like you want to take my gun away, just like you want to take marriage away, so that it becomes part of a bigger narrative of us versus them.
Right.
So you want gay marriage, and you want to take my gas-guzzling SUV away. I will oppose everything in your agenda.
Okay, next question.
Does that make sense?
Right, but I get all that, but then I say, shouldn't we as Christians be the adult in the room? Aren't we supposed to be the one that says, regardless of whether you agree with me or not, or regardless of what I feel like you're trying to do to me, it's my job to love you and serve you and not be angry or bitter and not let this divide grow between us?
Yeah, that sounds like maybe what Jesus might do.
You think?
Well, the hard part, especially in the environmental policy, is the environment is something that we all by definition share, right?
Correct.
No, I'm keeping my part.
So there are other political debates where, let me take another inflammatory one, abortion.
Oh man.
In that debate, one argument people make is, well, it's my body, right? Or if I'm a woman, it's my body, I should be able to do what I want. It's none of your business what I do with my body. In other words, you don't share my body, it's mine, I do it. And that, you can understand the argument even if you disagree with, whatever. The environment's different because we all breathe the same air, we all have to share the land, we have to share the water. And on a global scale, the environment is completely interrelated. So you can't just have America come up with a policy, you need global interaction. So that has led people on the extreme right to view environmental policy as sort of a Trojan horse to sneak in communist ideas, globalist ideas, socialist ideas, because it is by definition social.
Feminist ideas.
Right. So that's why a lot of people on the right.
The Earth is a girl.
Okay,
remember
I'm with you.
that.
And I think I don't agree with them entirely, but I do think they have a point. I remember sitting on a panel years ago with religious leaders. This was at Northwestern University. I was there to represent evangelicals, and there was a humanist on the panel, and somebody asked us all, based on your religious beliefs, what is your mission in the world? And the humanist said, when it was his turn to answer, it was all about creation, care, and environmentalism.
That sounds like it should have been your answer.
Well, but it was really fascinating because
Did he use the word creation?
No, he didn't use creation. It was environmentalism. It was environmentalism and protection of the environment and all that sort of stuff. And you realize, oh my goodness, if you're a humanist, if you're an atheist, our human instinct is we still need a mission. We need something that unites us with a purpose. And for them, it has become the green movement. And you go, okay, so there are political overtones to this whole thing that we can't be naive to think there aren't. There really are. I get that. It doesn't automatically mean the science is wrong. And that's where I think conservative Christians get in trouble, is we want to reject some of what's going on in the green movement because we see some of the political, cultural, and social underpinnings of it. But then we go so far as to say, well, the science must therefore be wrong. And the two aren't necessarily opposed to each other.
And I think what a lot of conservatives are opposed to is what is perceived as a politicalization. It's been politicized, the sciences, for an agenda of
so
the
you're
left.
Saying the left has hijacked science to bolster their arguments.
No one is completely neutral. Okay, that's partly why you've got to have peer-reviewed journals for science, because scientists make huge mistakes, and we just discovered that all the research done in the 50s and 60s that told us that fat was terrible for us but sugar was fine, all that research was funded by the sugar industry. It was hidden.
And ironically, sugar makes you fat.
Yeah. So that's where you can look back and say, okay, nothing is completely clean. There's no such thing as completely, because people are worried about their funding, their underwriting, people are worried about getting tenure, people don't want to rock the boat in their particular society that they want to be a member of, which is true of any industry. You're a realtor, you don't want to rock the real estate boat or you won't get ahead, and you're a scientist, there's politics and science. But we've become so mistrustful of that, like, everyone has an agenda, so I can't trust anybody. Except, here's my tribe. And my tribe is not a tribe of scientists. I don't know any scientists. My tribe is people who love Bill O'Reilly, or people who love, this person, or people who go to Rick Warren's church, and we just listen to Rick Warren, or just my Facebook page and Facebook community. Those are the only people I listen to, which is partly why, for example, the don't vaccinate your kids thing spread so much, because people trusted what they heard from their Facebook friends more than what they heard from their doctors, because they have a deeper relationship with their Facebook friends. And that's, so we're losing the ability, we're losing the belief that experts are trustworthy.
Definitely.
Anyone who says, I'm an expert. Trust me, I'm an expert.
Well, I think we've transferred where we view authority coming from, so that now authority comes from your digital proximity to me. If you share my network online, you have authority. And if you don't share my network online, you don't have authority. Whereas in the past, authority was how many letters were after your name, or what position did you hold in the government or in science.
Been published, but now everyone is published.
Exactly.
Everyone is published all the time.
This is an interesting twist.
Yeah. So
this was not one of our topics for today.
This is the irony. There are people listening to us right now who think we are an authority.
We're not. I'm so here to tell you.
They do. Some people do.
We are not.
Hey, we have a show. Therefore,
we're not.
Yeah.
We are
Don't you hear
experts.
how often we talk about like everything we don't know about?
Like nonsense?
Like nonsense. We are not.
But there are people out there who go, oh, I like them. They must be right.
What's the solution if you no longer trust any authorities except your own small...
It's Lord of the Flies. It's over. You're done.
Can we change it to Lord of the Rings?
It's the end of Western civilization.
It's even interesting.
How about Lord of the Dance? Can we change it to Lord of the Dance?
That would be much
Even
better.
if we all go down together, at least we'll be trotting nicely together. Yes.
I just think that that extends even into the Christian community. You know, there are so many variations of theology, so many variations of denominations that and one person can write one article about. I mean, we're going to talk about an article later. I can guarantee you there's another opposing view out there by someone just as respected.
Yeah.
Look at Charles Marsh and Eric Metaxas. You have two guys that are steeped in Dietrich Bonhoeffer, both coming to completely different conclusions about him, both very respected in the Christian community. So what do we do with that?
Yeah, and you even like in the last election cycle, the number of Christian authority figures that came out against Donald Trump and were completely ignored by the rank and file Christians.
Russell Moore.
Yeah, Russell. Well, Al Mohler. I mean, there was John Piper, Max Lucado, for heaven's sake.
Who could not hear Max Lucado? I mean, come on.
Could you?
He's published literally 30% of all the books in Christian bookstores are from Max Lucado.
Although some have said it's the same book.
Right, but it's still 30%.
Yeah. But yet we just like, oh, no, who says you're the boss of me? You're not the boss of me. My Facebook friends say this.
So your theory is, what I'm hearing you say, is that all of that is out the window, and really the only people that we give authority to are our Facebook friends, our Twitter friends.
Ones that we're in relationship with. We're more likely.
Well, why would we
I
think
wouldn't go
they
that
know
far.
more
Well,
than...
digital relationship?
Well, you brought up Bill O'Reilly.
I feel like, you feel like you have a relationship with Bill O'Reilly. Don't you feel like you have a relationship with Stephen Colbert?
Yes, definitely.
Ding, ding, ding. Guess what?
I love him.
You don't.
I don't?
No, because he doesn't know you exist.
Yeah, but I feel really close to him.
Exactly. But you're not. Because he's never spoken back to you.
No, that's true.
Well, we tend to gravitate toward voices that reaffirm what we want to believe. And usually what we want to believe is what's reinforced by our immediate community. So that, to a degree, you don't know Stephen Colbert, or another person may not know Bill O'Reilly, but if your immediate community affirms those ideas and you want to fit in with that community, then you will give authority to a Colbert or to a Bill O'Reilly.
Well,
and unfortunately, we become so much more siloed that few of us actually interact with people who share a different perspective. And if you don't have those incarnate relationships with people who think and believe differently than you do, it's easy to dismiss those other groups and demonize them, and think the worst of them.
Is there anywhere that is nurturing and encouraging that kind of interconnectivity? Where you can...
There are places that should be
building...
Like your local library?
Oh, actually, I was thinking about your local church.
Yeah, I knew you.
It's incredibly difficult. It's very, very difficult.
Because I don't think... Remember a long time ago, when you wrote this book called With, you were talking about...
I do remember that.
You were talking about how we were not taught... We were taught, you should have a relationship with God. But we were not taught about what that looked like and how you cultivate a relationship with the divine. Well, I kind of feel like that's the same here. We're being told we need to learn how to listen to each other. We need to learn to talk to each other in a non-threatening way. Nobody has the first idea how to do that.
Well, I think we do. It's just not easy. And so we choose the easier route, which is I'm just going to blast ideas on the internet, or I'm going to read something I disagree with and then shoot off a comment. And that's a cheap alternative. It's sort of, this is a bad crass analogy, but it's sort of like the difference between pornography on the internet and having an actual relationship with somebody of the opposite gender, and that includes sexual intimacy. Like, one is a lot more work and a lot more effort, and but it's ultimately fulfilling.
Well, ultimately, where we're headed towards is sex robots.
Right. So
there's more and more articles popping up about this is so much easier.
Exactly. I mean, it's so much easier to find immediate sexual gratification through pornography than it is through the work of cultivating a healthy relationship. Similarly, I mean, to back away from a sexual metaphor, rather than developing a meaningful incarnate relationship with people who think and believe differently than me so that I'll learn a level of mutual respect and understanding, I'd rather just read a caricature of their ideas on the internet and blast and dismiss them through a comment section on Facebook. That's much easier than the hard work of engaging with real live human beings. So that's, as a species, we tend to go with the easy and the quick, not the good and the right.
Here's a question based on recent news that also isn't on our list of stories to discuss today. How does it affect conservative Christians who are so tied in with Fox News to have Bill O'Reilly now gone for sexual harassment after Roger Ailes is gone for sexual harassment? And now, as of this morning, Sean Hannity's being accused of sexual harassment.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah. So
he says it's 100% fabricated, however.
Well, who has ever been accused of sexual harassment that did not initially say it was 100% fabricated?
Right.
But it's clear there was a culture at Fox News of sexual harassment. It's everyone who worked there admits that, and yet that became the watering hole, the trusted authority for so much of conservative Christianity. What does that affect anything? Do we care? Do we just say, oh, it's the left bringing down our heroes?
Do you know what it just came to my mind?
What?
What happened with the Catholic Church way back when there was a lot of inappropriate relationships happening between priests and altar boys.
Sadly, it wasn't way back when.
I know.
In the 80s.
Right, in the 80s. And it probably is still going on. But there was a culture of ignoring it. And you think, how in the world can we, not and be affected by this?
Well,
and it had a huge impact.
Yeah, but it was a very tiny percentage of Catholic priests that were guilty of that, and the sin of the church was
ignoring it.
And this is kind of different because this is like a very high percentage of the most powerful people at Fox News have now been accused of sexual harassment.
So I'm trying to pretend how I would react to this if I was a big fan of Fox News, but in my mind, I think you'd probably want to separate the behavior of some bad apples at Fox News from the ideology of Fox News. I think what liberals would probably want to do is link those two.
Yeah.
To say conservative ideology goes hand in glove with a low view of women, demeaning view of women and sexual harassment, whereas conservatives are going to go, no. Those things don't go together. This just happens to be a culture at one organization that fostered a lot of sexual predatory behavior by some really horrible people.
Right.
But you can't link them to the ideology. That's the argument.
There's some writers who say, well, this could bring down Fox News entirely.
I doubt that.
Well,
there's too many people who want that message that Fox News is offering.
But the question is, if you abandon Fox News, do you go to Breitbart? Do you actually push further to the right? Or do you come back? Can anyone come back towards the center?
Here's the difference. So I don't think anybody was watching Fox News because Bill O'Reilly sexually harasses women.
No.
I think they were watching Fox News because they really liked
Bill O'Reilly.
the political ideology and the personality that drove it through Bill O'Reilly. Now, if they can find more conservative commentators who carry that message that people find compelling, there will be an audience for Fox News.
Yeah.
They've taken a hit clearly because some of their top figures are being scandal-driven, but it's the audience is there. They will survive.
Yeah.
And there are plenty of people who are willing to make money off of that audience. So, yes, they will be there.
All right, so let's get to a story.
Okay.
Because this is such a mess, because the world and our culture has become so divisive and difficult for Christians to practice their faith in, Some are making the argument that we need to kind of pull back, that we need to cluster together a little more. So the new book out by Rod Dreher called The Benedict Option. Have you heard of it?
I heard Sky talk about the Benedict Option, calling it the Naaman Option.
No, I was offering an alternative.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. No.
That's what I meant.
Rob Dreher's been talking about this for a couple of years. The book is now finally...
Oh, the book is out.
Yeah.
And it's a cover story on Christianity Today. Rod Dreher is a conservative. He writes for the American Standard.
He's a Catholic, I believe.
Conservative Catholic, writes for the American Standard. He came to see the churches, including his own church, as now I'm quoting from him, as largely ineffective in combating the forces of cultural decline. Traditional, historic Christianity, whether Catholic, Protestant, or Eastern Orthodox, ought to be a powerful counterforce to the radical individualism and secularism of modernity. Even though conservative Christians were said to be fighting a culture war, with the exception of the abortion and gay marriage issues, it was hard to see my people putting up much of a fight. We seemed content to be the chaplaincy to a consumerist culture that was fast losing a sense of what it meant to be Christian. Then he quotes philosopher Alistair MacIntyre. Are you familiar with him?
I'm not.
Alistair
Please
MacIntyre.
enlighten me.
I hope he's Irish or Scottish. Who said that Western civilization had lost its moorings. MacIntyre said that the time is coming when men and women of virtue will understand that continued full participation in mainstream society was not possible for those who want to live a life of traditional virtue. These people would find new ways to live in community, he said, just as St. Benedict, the 6th century father of Western monasticism, responded to the collapse of Roman civilization by founding a monastic order. So Rod labeled this the Benedict Option. The idea is that serious Christian conservatives could no longer live business as usual lives in America, that we have to develop creative communal solutions to help us hold on to our faith and our values in a world growing even more hostile to them. We would have to choose to make a decisive leap into a truly countercultural way of living Christianity, or we would doom our children and our children's children to assimilation.
This sounds like a commune.
The examples that he gives tend to be towards the communal end of things. People doing some interesting things. This is interesting. Cultural critic Mary Eberstadt argues that religion is like a language. You can learn it only in community, starting with the community of the family.
She wrote a really good book.
That I agree with.
How the West Really Lost God?
Yeah, that's a very good book.
When both the did you ding it? Okay, thank you. When both the family and the community become fragmented and fail, the transmission of religion to the next generation becomes far more difficult. And this is also interesting. Eberstadt says, when concrete embodiments of the relationship to God crumble, so tradition, ritual, the stuff that a community does together, it becomes very hard to hold on to God in the abstract.
Her book, How the West Really Lost God, takes the popular narrative and proves it's backwards. So the popular narrative is that a society becomes secular, kind of diminishes its commitment to religion, and as a result of secularization, people marry less and they have fewer children. And what she basically proves in that book, I think pretty convincingly, is it's the opposite. That what really goes on is people, because of consumeristic and economic reasons, get married less, have fewer children, and as a result, the society becomes secularized. That it's the loss of marriage and family that results in secularization, not the other way around.
Interesting.
And how religion is actually transmitted in family, and why having children makes people more religious in general. It's a really fascinating book.
So we all need to have way more children.
It isn't about having more children.
10,
it's just
12.
when, we've all been through this.
The more children you have, the more religious you become.
It's when you have children, issues start arising about how do I transmit moral ideas? How do I help my kids understand death? All those, your life becomes something beyond just your own self, focus, all these different ideas that religion is primed to help you deal with. And when you don't have those relationships, a secular understanding of the universe is far more not appealing, but acceptable. So anyway, it's an interesting book worth reading.
Yeah, so he holds up the Orthodox Jewish community as an interesting example. Orthodox Jewish brothers in faith have faced horrifying attempts to destroy their families and their communities. Geography is one secret to the strength and resilience of Orthodox Jewish communities. Because their faith requires them to walk to synagogue on the Sabbath, they must live within walking distance.
Well, that's a very practical, requirement.
You often see that Jews who are able to go to synagogue 2 or 3 times a day in addition to the Sabbath are also those most able to maintain a healthy distance from the most nefarious elements of modern culture. That's interesting.
It is.
Well,
We should all live within a mile of our churches.
I actually
and we
have
still wouldn't go. I'm serious. Because there's a fundamental difference between what he's describing with an Orthodox Jewish community and, say, an evangelical Christian.
What is the fundamental difference?
Well, there's a couple. First of all, I think in his argument, I think the Roman Catholic Church has a much better chance of doing what he's describing than an evangelical community does.
Well, it's because they have parishes and...
Well, not just that, but Orthodox Judaism is not just a set of ideas. It's a set of practices.
Yeah. It's a set of rituals.
It's a set of rituals. It's the way you dress. It's the way you organize your week. It's what you do on the Sabbath.
It's your diet.
It's your diet, right? It's all these. Roman Catholicism, while not Orthodox Judaism, still is a series of practices. You go to confession. You go to the Mass. There's things that you do in an incarnate way. Modern evangelicalism has no common practices.
Yeah.
It's all about words and ideas. It's just intellectual assent to a set of doctrines, but it doesn't actually...
Right.
There's nothing about evangelicalism that separates you from dominant American practices.
Well, actually, that is why there is a rise of evangelicals moving toward Episcopal churches, because there are those practices and those traditions that, sort of usher you into the greater, Christian body. And quite frankly, this sounds divine to me, particularly after when I wanted to go to practice Lent and go to there was no evangelical church doing an Ash Wednesday service. So I walked to the little Episcopal church down the street for me, and it was awesome. And I do think if we had to walk and interact with our community,
then we'd have to be with people that are different than us.
But we would have closer relationships with them, and we would learn how to love them. Your family is very different, and you love them.
My family is different?
From each other.
Oh, I guess so.
You and Lisa are kind of different. And yet you love
my
her.
Immediate family?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You're talking about my mom? You're talking about my wife?
I'm talking about your wife.
Oh, my wife?
You and your wife are very different.
We're both Swedish.
But anyway, my point is, if you were in a deeper relationship with people that were different from you,
my wife?
Like your wife, you would love them more. You had to learn to love her through her differences.
Oh, yes, it was hard.
You wrote a book about that.
Oh, a children's book.
Yeah.
But it was in disguise. Shh.
Oh, you say it on the back cover.
Yeah, I do. Okay. So here's an interesting example of people trying to solve this problem. Eighth Day Books is a Christian bookstore in Wichita,
They still have those?
Kansas.
That's countercultural.
That really is.
They founded the Eighth Day Institute as the store's nonprofit educational arm. They are committed to small O Orthodox ecumenism.
What is that?
Big O Orthodox means Eastern Orthodox. It's the church.
It's a particular denomination.
Small O Orthodox ecumenism is just getting everybody together under Orthodox Christianity, but from whatever background.
Yeah, like anybody who can affirm the Apostles' Creed. Let's all get together.
Yeah.
Okay.
They host various symposia and events throughout the year. The signature event, though, may be the Hall of Men, a twice-monthly gathering in their clubhouse. They have a clubhouse.
That sounds like a gathering in San Francisco, Castro neighborhood.
Hey!
Yeah.
A kind of Christian speakeasy next door to the bookstore in which Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant men have been coming together since 2008 to pray, to discuss and debate the works of a great figure of Christian history, then to sit around the table drinking pints of beer and enjoying each other's company. They've now launched a parallel sisters organization called the Sisters of Sophia. Ways for mere Christians to engage the great tradition, to root themselves in it, and to go out into the world to renew culture.
Basically, he's describing any Acts 29 small group.
Let's see. Yeah.
Here's what I don't get about the Benedict option.
All right, what don't you get?
What is it? Why do they call it that anyway?
Well, here's like
St. Benedict started the monastic movement.
What Dreyer's describing is not Benedictine spirituality. I mean, Benedict was this 5th century monk who sees Rome collapsing.
Yeah.
And he decides we need to get out of here, and to preserve the faith, we're going to create this isolated, protected, communal monastery to preserve the truths of Christianity. He completely separates. And I think Dreyer understands that's an impossibility in the modern world, to truly isolate completely from the rest of the culture. Okay, fine. Well, then don't call it the Benedict option. What he's basically arguing for in the book, which I don't disagree with, is we actually need to make disciples of Jesus. And we can't expect that to happen by just assimilating to the popular culture.
Yeah.
But what I think he's reacting to is, at least from our tradition and an evangelical tradition, for the last 100 years, we thought that we were going to impact the culture first through revivals. If we just go out there and preach the gospel and people come back to faith.
That was the 70s.
Well, even before that. I mean, you go
starting in the 40s.
Yeah.
You can go back into the 1800s with Moody and Billy Sunday and all those, and kind of the era of all that was Billy Graham. But yeah, we're gonna preach revivals and we're gonna transform our culture. It didn't happen. And then it became, in the 70s and 80s and 90s, well, we're going to go after political engagement. And if we get the right people in politics, that will transform the culture. And obviously that hasn't worked. And now the church is finally waking up to the idea that, you know what, maybe we should have been making disciples all along. And what Dreyer is basically saying is, yeah, we need to make.
Well, it sounds like he's saying
make disciples.
We ought to leave this society and go live in a commune over here by ourselves.
But he's admitting you can't. So he's like, well, here's an example of a bookstore that gets together with a bunch of Christians to drink and talk about. It's a small group.
But okay, yeah.
It's a small group. I don't understand what's so radical about that.
He also talks about the Alleluia community who live together in Augusta, Georgia, in a distressed neighborhood.
So it's a small group with benefits.
Has around 800 members.
Yeah.
They're living in community.
Exactly. Well, it's a more intense sort of small group, but that's basically what all these are different forms of saying we need to figure out how to deconstruct the influence of the popular culture and create environments where people can actually follow Jesus. That is a basic definition of what the local church is supposed to do.
Would it benefit us to intentionally live closer to our churches?
It could, but that's a means. It's not a vision.
Look, I think that we certainly are too fragmented as a society. You know, our families now are all spread out. We live sometimes far away from our churches. Sometimes we're not going to our churches at all. It is impossible to practice the Christian faith outside of community. Mm-hmm. And so there is no way that it would hurt us to live more closely in community with others, you know.
But then we'd have to sacrifice what we really want. Because do you know what we really want, Christian?
What?
Christian Taylor.
What do we really want, Phil?
What we really want is the biggest house in the nicest neighborhood with the best schools that we can afford.
That is what we want. That's because money and luxury and comfort are our idols.
Well, but it's for our kids.
Well,
it's for our kids.
Can I not be so negative for a second?
Go right ahead.
Wait a minute. What did you say?
Yeah, I don't want to be so negative for a second.
Okay.
In other words, there is that consumeristic thing that Phil's describing.
Yeah, you're the one always talking
but here's
about
the other
that.
side. I know,
but
to be fair, again,
we've been listening to you.
Wait a minute, though. Dreyer's a Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
And there are good things about that tradition. What is distinct about the evangelical tradition is we have historically tried to posture ourselves to advance the mission of the gospel by reaching non-believers. Right? The Benedict option, if you go back to Benedict in the 5th century or some of what Dreyer is describing here, is essentially first and foremost a posture of preservation. We want to protect and preserve the faith. If you move in that direction, then you are going to be sacrificing your ability to reach non-believers with the gospel.
I disagree.
But historically, that's been the case.
For example, let's take this Alleluia community, right?
Alleluia.
I am sure that if they're truly living, as this article states, in this community of 800, enriching the communities around them and loving their neighbors and serving their communities, that is what we're supposed to do. And it is an outreach to other people. And it's an example of Christ living among us.
I agree, but here's the problem. Let's say somebody has an encounter with this Hallelujah community and they're served in the Alleluia community and they're served and they start to be drawn into, tell me more about this Jesus. I want to know about this Christianity. And eventually they get to the point of, but if you're going to follow him, you need to join our community and move into this commune, they're going to be like, whoa,
That's
whoa,
not
whoa.
what they're saying. And that's
but
I don't think they're saying that, Sky. But people might want to. I mean, when Benedict,
that's fine.
When they started building monasteries, people were flocking to join them. They were drawn to that
for various reasons. But
people out of society.
But this is the tension. It's of the world or in the world. You know, that
I just think sanctification happens when we are rubbing elbows with one another and we run up against somebody else's likes, dislikes, and desires as opposed to our own. And so when we live in isolation and we separate ourselves and we live in our little houses, we are not challenged.
Well, what's the difference between that and then living in a community where everybody agrees with me?
Even though they may agree ideologically, they are not going to agree with where you should plant your tree or how you should decorate your house or...
Okay, my argument is simply that a lot of the Benedict option as it's being interpreted today, I think is predicated on self-preservation and self-protection, which is a posture of fear. Rather than a posture
but wouldn't he say, no, we're talking about trying to pass on the faith. We're preserving Christianity, not preserving my
I've read a lot of what he's
family.
written over the last couple of years, and he talks about the LGBT agenda and these other things as dramatically militaristic, aggressive postures trying to destroy our families and destroy our way of life. It's a very defensive...
That's what I heard.
Well, it's a very defensive posture, and I think that when we accept the idea that we are to be afraid and we're to circle the wagons to protect our families and transmit the faith, that is not a faithful posture to what Jesus has called us to.
I totally agree with you.
So so there's this tension.
I just think there's a balance.
Well, I don't know if it's a balance. There's a tension between, yes, we need to create environments where our faith can be transmitted faithfully to the next generation, but we also need to be in the world, engaging with neighbors who think differently, working in industries and in sectors of the society where there aren't a Christian witness, being involved in government and the arts and all these other areas as faithful believers, rather than saying we're going to withdraw and have our little enclave with our own little gardening community, with our own little publishers and our own little everything so that we can protect our kids. I think that's a dangerous environment.
I agree with you 100%.
Okay.
So what I'm about to say does not disagree with you. I agree with you 100%.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't. No, it's I agree with you. And I do think that the pendulum needs to swing back a little bit from our individualism. And I think as a Christian, I feel like it would be important for me to be more closely knit in a Christian community on a regular basis instead of going to church every, little...
It's kind of biblical.
It is.
And I don't disagree with that at all. I've written about that myself. But I think we just got done talking about that internet phenomenon of we're going to engage with people who think and act just like us. Taken the wrong way, the Benedict option only reinforces that siloing effect.
But me spending time in my church community actually puts me in contact with people that don't think and act like me.
There are degrees.
That's true for you, for sure.
There are degrees of difference. If I only hung out with my church community, I wouldn't know my neighbors down a couple houses who are Muslims. I wouldn't interact with people who are atheists. I wouldn't interact with people who think different politically. I mean, it is a largely spiritually homogenous community. So the biggest hang up I have with what Dreyer's writing about is I love the fact that he's saying we need to be thinking really critically about how we're making disciples. I could not agree more. My concern is that it's coming from a fear-based rather than a love-based drive toward the culture. We're afraid of what's going on around us rather than we're called to love the people who are around us. That's my biggest concern with it.
Interesting. And I think it would just be interesting to challenge myself to choose my neighborhood based on proximity to my spiritual community as opposed to economic goals.
I agree with you.
I'd like to point out that of the three of us, I'm the only one who lives within walking distance of my church.
I know.
That's for sure. Well, and I will say one other thing that this article made me think about. I realized that I am in a community living right next to neighbors that I could be more aggressively loving.
Right.
and making this
You should knock on their door and say, "Hi, I'd like to aggressively love you."
Yeah, and then tackle them.
That might not go over so well. But I've been praying about how can I really love my neighbors in a way where they feel the love of Christ emanates from our little house and make disciples right around
So
me.
what I'd be fascinated to know is if you had neighbors who were a gay couple, what would Dreher say your relationship with them should be?
Well, I don't know what he would say, but I do know I did have to face that.
Yeah.
And it was a wonderful opportunity for me to look at my own prejudices and my own uncomfortability, and these were a gay couple that were Christians. So that was super challenging. But I'm still called to love and interact with them like Jesus.
All right, I got to wrap it up.
Okay.
I got to wrap it up. Oh, I think Rod Dreher would like to be the mayor of his own Christian community. Is that bad or is that good? Well, we're really not sure. We're acting with impunity to say it might be good in a way, but we still need to get out and say to everyone in our neighborhood that no matter where you worship, we can still be good friends, and Sky has to wonder why we're all afraid. Yay, I worked in several things. Okay, do we have any news? Anything we need to tell them about? When's your book coming out, Sky? When's your new book coming out?
My book will be out, I don't know, when is it? Is it the 20th? Yeah, May 20th.
May 20th?
What
Okay.
book is that?
Okay, so
What's Wrong with Religion?
that
Okay.
sounds good. I can't wait
Is that
for
an
it.
ebook?
No, this is a book.
No,
It's a book book.
It's a book.
Book.
Okay.
We'll talk about it more when we get there.
And then also I have to say, I want to ask you, how is your giving away your devotional thing going?
We are doing well.
He
Yeah?
successfully gave it away.
We've given away. Yeah. So we switched our the way we do the devotional so that anybody who gives a donation of any amount to the ministry that I work under automatically gets on the list to receive the Devo. So we've pretty much recuperated their lost revenue by canceling everyone's previous subscriptions. So going forward, if you contribute to my ministry, you'll get the Devo, and you'll help advance the ministry and help me do books like the one I'm going to release pretty soon here.
Awesome. And
And I'm working on something
I was going to ask you that.
to help families. Big surprise. To help families pass on their faith to their kids with devotions for their kids. But it's not ready yet, so you'll hear more about it in the future.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then we have a movie proposal
Oh, there's a new
podcast
movie
coming
proposal
out.
Yes, we
podcast.
just recorded episode 17. Is that
Which
right?
is what?
We did Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures.
And I talked,
I love
and
that.
I shared my deep concerns about the new Star Wars movie coming out. And,
deep
And the
concerns.
trailer. I have two big concerns. You got to check it out. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, you guys have a great week, and we will see you next time.
See you guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The Phil Fisher Podcast is produced by Phil Fisher Enterprises and recorded live at Jellyfish Lab Studios. This episode was edited by Jason Rugg and was fact-checked by absolutely no one. For more information, go to philfisher.com.